I'm Brannon Poe, and this is the Accountant's Flight Plan podcast, where you can enjoy engaging conversations about mergers and acquisitions and accounting practice management. Listen in on strategies to build a more fun and valuable accounting firm.
Hey, this is Liesl. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Accountant's Flight Plan. We've got a special offer for our listeners. If you want to save $250 on Accounting Practice Academy, our 8-week practice management workshop, use the promo code POD250 when you submit your application and start building a practice you would buy.
Welcome to the Accountant's Flight Plan podcast. I have, probably my most visited guest today, Geraldine Carter. Welcome, Geraldine.
Oh, thank you. It's good to be back. I think maybe this is 3, if not 4.
I think so. And I've gone on your podcast as well. So I always enjoy our conversations. So for those of you who don't know about Geraldine's background or who she is a business coach for overworked solo CPAs and firm owners who want to go down to 40 hours without giving up revenue. Her clients routinely shave hundreds of hours off of their to-do lists and get back above water so they can reshape their practice into one in which they thrive. Her podcast, Business Strategy for CPAs, has more than 100,000 downloads and is ranked in the top 10 podcasts for CPAs by Apple Podcast. Welcome again, Geraldine.
I can't wait for our conversation.
Yeah. Well, before we hit the record button, we were talking a little bit about PE firms, and I've had a lot of conversations with people who have a lot of contact with other CPAs about private equity PE firms. And you shared something with me that I wasn't really surprised about, but I think maybe we could talk about it just briefly before we get into our conversation about pricing. So we're going to really dive into pricing today. But yeah, PE firms. So what's going on? What are you seeing in your client base?
I'm just seeing balls out of left field in a way that I haven't before, with offers that are either way high, like, wait a minute, if I just do some napkin math, that's a multiple of like 2 or 3 or more. Like, what's going on there? And not that I don't think that that is possible for well-run firms potentially, but it just seems so far out of left field at the moment. And at the other end, I see these ridiculous lowball offers that I'm like, what are you even talking about? That's not even a serious offer. So, and I'm seeing that in a way that I haven't seen before. In addition, that these offers are totally unsolicited.
Yeah.
It's not like the person has been sniffing around thinking about selling, maybe putting out, floating trial balloons. It's like these are utterly unsolicited, out of nowhere, and way off the far ends of the bell curve.
Yeah. And we're seeing that's happening a lot. The private equity industry is really coming into the accounting industry pretty seriously.
Mm-hmm.
And we've seen a lot of that. I'm actually going to write another pretty comprehensive paper on it. And we wrote a blog post on it last October that's gotten a lot of reads, a lot of eyeballs on it. And it's an interesting thing. I just, I always share these podcasts with our audience and try to keep everybody abreast of what's going on in the industry. And that's kind of something that's happening. And it sounds like it's happening unsolicited everywhere. So that's been my experience too.
Yeah. And what I'm seeing from my clients is that it kind of throws them for a loop because it was unexpected. It makes them rethink everything, reconsider. Suddenly their baby, in air quotes, is on the table for sale with a price tag on the big toe. And they're like, hold on. And, it makes them ask themselves like, whoa, what does this mean? Could I do this? Would I do this? And all this stuff. And, it's always a compliment when somebody wants to buy your firm because you're like, wow, somebody's interested in the work I've put together. But I think the risk, especially for the non-serious buyers and some of what we talked about in the green room that I think you can bring up, is that it can be, unfortunately, nothing but a very real distraction that takes them down a rabbit trail. They go underground, they run around for 3 months entertaining this idea of a sale. It was never going to be an offer that went through successfully, and they've just burned a bunch of their own time, energy, and focus running around underground for something that was never going to work in the end.
Right. Yeah, we see some, I guess, some different sort of ethical uh, practices in PE. There's some good ones and there are some bad ones, and yeah, and those offers, it's not like they're singling out a person and going, "Oh, I just want to buy your firm." That's not what's happening. They're sending them to a lot of people, and they're using AI tools to email people, and it's but anyway, it is interesting. It's an interesting thing that's going on in the industry. So I just wanted to touch on it. Thanks for sharing your experience.
Yeah.
All right, let's get into some of the things that well, this is a good segue, because I feel like a lot of the reason that private equity is even interested in our industry is because they see that there's a lot of opportunity. So CPAs who own a practice, guess what? There's a lot of opportunity in this industry. If you don't capitalize on it, if you don't take advantage of those opportunities, somebody else will. So I think, in a way, let this be a little bit of a wake-up call, if you will, to maybe it's time to do some things differently, because some really smart people are looking at this industry and going, "Hey, there's a great opportunity here. I'd like to get in on this." So, but CPAs are smart people, but why do they work so much?
Yeah. A combination of factors. One of them is the culture of hourly billing, not just as a pricing in air quotes tool, although I wouldn't call it a pricing tool. Another is the culture of hours and the status assigned to people who work 25-hour, who bill 2,500 hours a year, and that somehow makes you a better person, a more important worker, a better team player, all the things. That's a disaster. I could say more about that if you want me to. Another one is being a generalist. And because of hourly billing, it doesn't matter what kind of work you did or who you did it for, what the quality was, you just billed for the time. And another one is the absence of pricing tools, knowing how to price your work. And if you don't know what your people are buying, it's really difficult for you to price it. And accountants have typically sold their work by the hour, which makes no sense because nobody cares about your hour. You can't actually buy a person's hour. That's not a physical thing.
Yeah.
And another piece is the relative absence of systems or systems that are janky. And also supported by hourly billing, it didn't matter if you were slow and inefficient and had no idea how to use keyboard shortcuts to navigate, resize cells, move this, copy, paste that. The more inefficient you were, the less you knew about keyboard shortcuts and anything that made your job faster, the less you got paid. Or the more you got paid, the more inefficient you were. So there was an incentive to maintain inefficiency. So you put all these things together, and accountants are told they need to work long hours. They believe they are lionized for working long hours. Their systems, if they're janky or inefficient, make them work long hours to get the work done. They get interrupted all the time by phone calls, emails, whatever. So it's just a mess. And the good news is, back to the opportunity, is that it's all solvable, right? These are not rocket science problems. These are actually really simple problems to solve.
Yeah.
And when we just lay them out on the table and put them in order of priority of low-hanging fruit and just start chipping away, we can solve them pretty readily. And with my clients, we can typically drop 15 hours a week over a 4 to 6 month time period.
Yeah. It's I see it too. I see a lot of them overworking, and I think accountants in general care greatly about their clients, and it's sometimes I feel like that care about their clients can also kind of create a lot of overwork. They don't say no to things. They do get out of their wheelhouse. They don't focus on, they don't put boundaries around, okay, this is what I'm good at, and this is what I'm going to do. I'm not going to go over here and do something that I'm not familiar with without really thinking about it. So, and in your book, this is interesting because I see, we have a talent shortage in the industry right now, another trend that's going on and affecting pretty much everyone across the country and in Canada. But it used to be you could just add more staff as you got busier and busier. You just go out and get another person, and that sort of was going to solve the problem. And in your book, you say that hiring doesn't solve the overworking problem. So I've seen this too. So I'd love to get your take on this.
It makes perfect sense. You can see the logic, right? I'm working too many hours. I have too much work to do. Therefore, I should hire a person to take some of the work off my plate. You can totally follow that. The problem is that so often what they don't ask them, what the CPA doesn't ask himself or herself is, wait a minute, why is it that I have so much work on my plate? What are the causes of this amount of work on my plate if I go upstream? What if the amount of work on my plate is just a symptom of decisions that I've been making for the last months, weeks, or years that are now downstream 2 years later, causing my desk to overflow with papers? And if we trace the symptom of overworking back upstream, we find the same things, that they're serving too broad of a population, often with very little boundaries. Usually it's, tell me what work do you want done? And I will do it for you and I will bill you for it. Or maybe I have a flat rate price for it. But if you want me to do work for you, I will do work for you. Prices are too low. Oftentimes what I'm seeing across my clients is prices are too low by a factor of 2 or 3. Right. And in some cases, 4. I just had a client in my mastermind come on my podcast. She's been in my program for 2 years. And she said that in the last 2 years, she has quadrupled her prices compared to what she would have offered it at 2 years ago. So, and this is common. We don't also quadruple prices overnight. Typically, that's not how that works. They get stepped up over time. But prices are often too low by a factor of 2 or 3. And because the CPA is all over the place, and these are their words, not mine. My clients say to me, I'm all over the place. My clients are all over the place. My work's all over the place. My staff's all over the place. Everything's all over the place. Because they're all over the place, their workday is inefficient. They know this. I'm not revealing any giant surprises to them. Their workday is inefficient. They get interrupted all the time. And there's very little time to focus on making the work more efficient. So it's almost like if they had intentionally designed their business this way, they are just begging for gridlock. There are too many cars on the streets. It's 5 o'clock. Everybody's trying to go in the same direction. It's just for a grid and no cars can move. So the solution is not to build more roads. It's the same problem, right? So the solution is to go back upstream, to fix your pricing problems, to work on your systems and make them more efficient, and to move from being a generalist to focusing and getting yourself in the direction of and eventually into a niche. If you solve the upstream problems, you will relieve the downstream symptom of overworking. But if you hire, and this is the problem, this is where I see a lot of accountants get trapped. If they're already overworking 60 hours a week and they bring on a person who they need to hire and get trained up. They already have no time. Their prices are already too low. And now they've just added 60 or 140K of expense. And that person comes into a generalist situation and the breadth of what they need to learn is huge. So it exacerbates all the overworking problems and sends the firm in the wrong direction. We need to solve the problems upstream, and we need to do 180 and go back the other way.
Yeah. Yeah. And in a way, I think some of these people, some CPA owners are discovering this because they can't hire right now. So they're sort of discovering, oh, I can't hire. So what can I do to get relief? And it's sort of where the problem is a blessing in disguise.
Mm-hmm. It forces you to solve it a different way, which thankfully, because the old way doesn't really work in the long run.
Yeah. You got to look at tools. You got to kind of rethink everything. You got to step back and reassess. So
and the money move is to ask, where do my clients get the most value? because it's very unlikely to be in the work that you're doing for them. Most
Yeah.
value for them is likely in the access, in the money, in the clarity around money, in having a good experience and having it be simple and having things just happen behind the scenes so they don't have to think about it. That's where the value is. That's where there's a lot more value. So if we can solve the problem by doing a 180 turnaround and look at where the value is for clients, rather than pile more work onto the firm's plate, things get a lot easier.
Yeah. Yeah. I see that too. So one of the things that I hear people say is, how do you price up front when you don't know what's going to be involved, how much time is going to be involved with whatever it is, project work?
Yeah. This is such a great question, right? Because part of the challenge is if you're in the habit and the mentality of hourly billing, how do you break out of that? Because it's a different way of thinking. So there are two prongs to the I don't know how long it's going to take question. One of them is I have no idea how long it's going to take because I have no idea what's under the hood. So if you don't know what's under the hood, then you can price a diagnostic to find out what is under the hood. Much like you take your car to the auto mechanic, it used to be that they would price by the hour parts and labor and time, and they would just price it up and you'd come in. And if you wanted your car back, you'd have to fork it over. Even if your car was only worth $500 and it was a beater and they just, spent $1,000 of your dollars to replace the clutch. And you're like, dude, thanks a lot. Right now I'm $500 in the hole here. And it's the same kind of thinking, right? So now when you go to the auto mechanic, they've wisened up. Now they'll do a diagnostic and they'll give you a price and a quote before they get started on the work. And that's a way better experience for both parties because you don't put yourself as the seller in the position of not getting paid by your client who's like, wait, what the heck? No one told me it was going to be $1,000. I wouldn't have signed up for that. And you put your buyer in a much better position because now they can make a choice vis-a-vis price. So if you have no idea how long it's going to take, price a diagnostic, figure out how long it's going to take you to do a diagnostic. What do you need, right? What reports do you need? What access do you need? It probably is going to take a couple hours. So price it somewhere at $795 or $995 or $495, wherever you're comfortable and confident that it's not going to be a problem. And that way you can look under the hood, find out what's there, and then set a price for phase 2 of work.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So that was prong 1. Prong 2 is I don't know exactly how long it's going to take. And when you get out of hourly billing, you don't need to know exactly how long it's going to take. You just need to know close enough how long it's going to take so that you can establish a cost, which becomes your floor, at a price beneath which it is not worth it to you to do the work. And that's all the time estimation does, is help you establish a cost to you so that you know where to price it so that you don't price unprofitably for you, obviously. So we need to answer those questions, 1 and 2. I have no idea how long it's going to take. I don't know exactly how long it's going to take, and answer accordingly. And the last piece here is, if my challenge to your listeners is, if you can't confidently set a price, then don't sell it, because it's not fair to your buyer for them to make a buying decision absent of a price.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'd add one other thing to it, and it's, what is the value of this work to the client? That's another question. By focusing on the hours, a lot of times you're not asking that question, which is kind of more about the top end price. Like, what's it worth for the client? What are they getting from this? And I think, to me, that's the fundamental flaw of hourly billing is there's not a lot of thought put into the value that's being received on the other side. And when you start putting thought into the value being received on the other side, then you start to get, it's just natural for the brain to start going, well, gosh, I think we could add this service maybe that they didn't ask for, that would be incredibly valuable for them. And I could offer this to them. And not only would I make more money, but it would benefit, we would all benefit. And then that goes back to the overworking thing. If you're overworking, you're not going to slow down and take time to look for more opportunity for more work. You've got so much work, you can't get it all done. So it's a vicious cycle.
hourly billing is a vicious cycle. It's a trap. And you bring up an important concept, and this is one that I talk about. I just send an email to my list. I write to them every day, and I use this example of value-based or price-based product design, right? So when you talk about this question of what's it worth to the client, you also ask the question, what is it that they actually want? What is it that's really important here? What problem are we actively trying to solve here? Because they're asking me for this service, but so what about the service, right? No, I have an engineering degree. I never sold engineering services by the pound or by the hour or by the pixel. Like nobody cares about engineering services and laminar flow and turbulent flow models. Like nobody wants that. But a farmer wants his field to be dry if it's flooded, right? So it comes in handy if you want to model the flow of water. But he's not buying turbulent flow studies by the hour. So it would force me in that situation to ask the question, like, why does he even want engineering services? Like, what? Oh, he wants a dry field. Okay. So now I can go, well, for $100,000, here's what I can do. For $10,000, here's what I can do. For $1,000, here's what I can do. For $100, here's what I can do. For $10, buy my book, right? And when you start with the price, it forces you to think differently about how you can solve your client's problems in different ways and different levels of effort for you and varying degrees of DIY-ness for your client. And it helps you get a lot more creative about how you solve your client's problems. And it moves you away from the thought that people are paying me to do work, which is the old school W-2 mentality that we need accountants as business owners to get off of.
Hey y'all, Ian chiming in here again to let you know that we've announced the start dates for the 2024 sessions of Accounting Practice Academy. We're running it on May 24th, July 26th, and September 27th. APA, if you don't know, is an 8-week virtual workshop and an incredible resource for firm owners who need to get their hours down without affecting their bottom line. Most owners who take the workshop actually see a significant increase in profitability while reducing their hours. I know it sounds crazy, but dig into the workshop details on our website and check out some of our testimonials. So if you want to learn more, visit accountingpracticeacademy.com. Thanks for listening, and now back to the episode.
I think too, there's another component about hourly pricing or hourly billing that accountants have a hard time letting go of. And that is the idea of, I don't know if my staff are productive or not. And, I think that need of certainty around that is a big reason people don't stop tracking their hours. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, my thoughts are you give it up and give it a try.
So this also has multiple prongs to it. I do not like time tracking for the sake of billing, but I like time tracking for discrete amounts of time on specific processes for insight into how long is this taking, because it can answer a couple of questions. It can answer, why is this taking so long? It shouldn't be taking this long, right? And it may reveal training that has been insufficient and your staff is doing it a way that's old school and janky or manual and could be automated or something. It can also serve as something of it can help you establish your baseline cost, right? Like we know for sure that it takes 2 hours to do this kind of process. Okay, fine, great. That means that at a minimum, the price needs to be this if we want to break even. So it can help you establish a floor. It can also, when you know how long things take, can help you establish your capacity. A lot of accountants take on more clients. They tend to say yes because they think that revenue comes from clients. So a client knocks on the door, they're like, great, more revenue. But revenue doesn't come from clients, revenue comes from value. And as a consequence of thinking that revenue comes from clients, if the CPA wants more revenue, they take on more clients, whether there's space in the calendar or not. And they assume that they can just figure out the timing piece later. Tracking time helps us get real about this is how long these processes take. This is how many staff hours we have available in a given week or month. Therefore, this is the maximum amount that we can put in this system. So it can be useful to establish capacity and get clear-eyed about its limits. And it can also, once you start getting really efficient at your processes, it can serve as a way to gamify your work, right? So if something takes you 35 minutes last time, see if you can do it this time in 30 minutes by staying more focused and on track. And it can force you, it can force you in a fun way to get better and better and better at your process, find ways to fine tune it, make it faster. So I don't mind time tracking when it's used for useful purposes, but I don't like it when it's used to set price because cost has nothing to do with price.
I have a little different take on that. I think that the time it takes to do all that tracking is often underestimated, and I feel like there's sometimes so many different variables that can cause things to take longer that it's not terribly useful. I feel like the usefulness, the cost benefit analysis is that it's, in generally speaking, I feel like it's not worth it. It's not worth the energy and effort. And I've seen some practices that we've sold that there's no time tracking. They're tracking cash flow, they're tracking owner hours, they're tracking days off, they're tracking other metrics that give them a better indication than time, tracked. And so I'm of the opinion that you're better off letting it go, the tracking.
Interesting. So I believe that there are multiple ways to skin a cat.
Yeah.
And I don't have, I know that there's a time tracking debate. I don't come down firmly on either side. And if a person's experience is that they get more profitable and higher margins when they don't track time, then keep not tracking time.
Do what works. Yeah.
But if you track time and it helps you find things and you, as a result, become more profitable, then keep doing that because it's working.
Yeah. Yeah.
But don't do things that don't work. It's not like...
Right. But you bring up a good point. I think it could be helpful. Like if you've got some repetitive task that you're doing over and over and over and again, or your team is doing, a lot of a high volume, then it probably is good to know kind of what you're, generally speaking, how long something like that should take. The example that comes to mind is like a really simple 1040. You should kind of know how much time it would take to do a simple 1040.
Even I know that, and I don't do 1040s.
Yeah, right. So, just I'm thinking like that high volume kind of work that.
Yeah. And I don't think that the minutia of time tracking every 6 minutes, I'm not an advocate for that. That seems like a waste of time and distraction.
Yeah. But
I think more about measuring discrete things so that we know because it gives us information and now we know, and now we don't have to measure it just for the sake of measuring it because that's what we do around here.
Yeah.
I wouldn't do that. I
like what you say. You say it's hourly billing is a train wreck for your business. that kind of, what do you really think about it, Geraldine?
Yeah, have me on your podcast. I'll tell you what I tell you the truth. It's so, honestly, I think it's a crying shame that so many professional firms have operated on the hourly billing model for so long, because what it results in is these absurdities like competing for billed hours. On what planet does it make sense to compete for billed hours and who works more? That is not the goal. The goal is to work less. So just that right there, I'm like, what on earth are you guys thinking? This, we get into owning a business. And listen, I love my clients. I love my accountants. And I genuinely want them to be working less. So I don't want this to come across sounding like, what are you thinking? But what are you thinking? The goal when you hang your shingle is to make more money and to make that money in less hours so that you can have freedom, flexibility, autonomy, 4-day weekends when you feel like it, work from
Yeah.
anywhere with Wi-Fi, take 4 weeks vacation. This American model of bill 2,500 hours a year and take 2 weeks vacation if you're lucky, spend the first half of it sleeping because you need to get caught up, is complete lunacy. Why do we support this?
Yeah.
This came from Teddy Roosevelt almost 100 years ago. Think of what was happening 100 years ago. I'm not even sure we had rural electrification yet.
Yeah.
It was great for workers. It was a protection mechanism. But we've warped it into this goal of working, like he who works the most wins.
Yeah.
And most business owners want to work less. So if you want to work less, you have to stop billing hourly because you've got to stop tying your revenue to the hours you work.
Yeah. Yeah. I think a lot of it's just, it's the devil I think in a lot of cases, it's the devil and it's comfortable and it's familiar and, it gets the job done. I mean, the bills get paid and the career, is acceptable because you've been doing it for this long, and change is hard. That's what it comes down to, right? Is change is hard for people.
I think change is uncomfortable for people. But I also think there's a lot of going dogma in the accounting space that they think change is hard and tax season is stressful. These things aren't true. Tax season is just 10 weeks. It's only stressful because you design it that way.
Mhm.
Change is only hard if you think that what you're doing is scary. But when you look at where you're going, if you make change and you do it wisely, like I'm not advocating for willy-nilly change that, sinks you into a deep pothole. But if you're thoughtful about the changes that you make, where it can lead you is a 25-hour or a 15-hour work week with multiple 6 figures of take-home pay, with stress levels that go from an 11 on a scale of 1 to 10 down to a 3, with a business that you love that thrives where you can get untethered from your desk and get free. So if you look at it that way, isn't that change that you want?
Yeah.
So I think, people repeat this phrase, change is scary. I think we need to dispense with this phrase and just believe like, oh, I actually want change because it gets me the thing that I'm here for.
Yeah. And you help your clients with that. You do one-on-one coaching with owners and help them kind of facilitate that change. And
Yeah, and a huge piece of it. So I coach one-on-one, and I also have a series of mastermind programs. The first one's down to 40 hours, and then they go into down to 25 hours. And the first phase of it is mostly tactical because we're trying to right size and stabilize the firm. And that means looking at your lines of business. There are probably at least 6 service lines in there. There's 1040s, 1041s, 5227s, 990s, and all the rest, 1120S's, all the things, they're all in there. And that's not streamlined, let's just say. So we need to figure out what's in there. We need to figure out what we want to be in there, what we don't want to be in there. We need to figure out pricing. We need to figure out actual capacity. Take off rose-colored eyeglasses of like, yes to the client, we'll figure out the work later. And actually do the math, right? And I lovingly joke with my clients, far be it from me to tell a CPA to do the math, but we do the math. And we find out what actually fits. And what we actually need in order to get the revenue and the time and the numbers and the money to all line up. And then we go about making decisions, small decisions, sequentially, nothing that's so scary that we're going to blow a hole in the ship, but changes that actually make a meaningful difference and you can feel yourself progressing. And what we see is, like I said earlier, that with predictability, we can get stress levels down, we can get hours down, and revenue stays stable. What actually happens in real reality is that when their hours come down, revenue goes up as a byproduct.
Yeah.
It's not because we get the revenue up that suddenly we can get the hours down. That's backwards. We have to get the hours down first so that we can think about how to create value for clients and how to price effectively and how to make systems inside the business more efficient. And once they see that it's not about working all the time, that's when the light bulbs go off and they're like, oh, I don't have to be at my desk. That's not my job. My job is to create value for my clients and price it effectively and then deliver it efficiently. And once that takes 6 to 12 months for that to really assimilate as a concept.
Right.
But once they see it, it makes a world of difference. And that's when they start making decisions that turn the whole ship.
Yeah. Yeah. Our program is similar. We work on capacity first because you can't really make these changes until you create capacity to do so.
Yeah.
It's
100%.
it's and it is a little counterintuitive because it's not the way most people have operated in the past. It's like, oh, I want to progress. I need more. Well, at some point you're going to hit a ceiling and it's just not going to work anymore.
Exactly.
And
yeah. And that's the trap, right? It's like you hit that ceiling and you keep trying to break through that ceiling with the same thinking. But when you hit that ceiling, we need to change the thinking.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you have a relatively new book out. You published a book earlier this year. Is that right? Or was it last year? Was it 2020?
Yeah. It came out in April, so a couple months ago.
Okay, just that recently. Tell us about your book. What's the title? Where can you get it?
Yeah, it's Down to 40 Hours. It's a roadmap for CPAs to end overworking without giving up revenue. And in it, I lay out the things that we've been talking about. We talk about value. I lay out value because it's a nebulous concept. You can't touch it, smell it, feel it, taste it. So I get really concrete about value so that it's easy to understand ways to create value for clients that don't require more time and more work from especially you as the business owner. And I talk about pricing, break down pricing, because pricing is a huge topic. You could get a PhD in it, but you don't have time for that. So I just lay out the most useful pricing tools that I've seen my clients use to greatest effect. And you and I have had a conversation about pricing being the most readily available tool that you can use tonight and feel the difference tomorrow. So I cannot underscore the importance of understanding just the basics around pricing tools. And I cover niching because niching is a huge driver. It is an enormous engine in your business when it comes to potential revenue that I also think is avoided because it's scary. So I lay out how to niche, what the process and the journey is like, how to think about it to make it easier for you, because I get that it feels like having your toes curled over the ledge. You think there's going to be no business. And I talk about how to message to attract better clients. A lot of accountants think, I hate sales and I suck at marketing. Imagine how much money you could make if you actually had a nice, tight marketing message that attracted the kind of clients that you wanted to work with. And then I touch on systems and business models because the old school, antiquated model of hourly billing isn't it for most people, right? They want take-home pay that is healthy and respectable, but they want low stress, more time, autonomy, and flexibility. So there are business model options in there that help CPAs get those things without having to hire staff. So it's a simple read. It's a fun read. There's no fluff. Who has time for it? And you can get it on Amazon. You can find it at my website too, geraldinecarter.com/book.
Awesome. Well, as we wrap up, what's the best way for people to connect with you? Just go on.
The easiest way is certainly my website, geraldinecarter.com. You can also, I kind of lurk on LinkedIn. You can find me there. I'm the only Geraldine Carter on LinkedIn if you search. So those are the two easiest ways. And you can certainly hunt down my email address if people want to email me.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Geraldine, for coming on. It's been fun.
It's always fun to talk to you.
Thanks for listening to the Accountant's Flight Plan podcast. You can keep the momentum going by subscribing and sharing your thoughts with us. Visit our website at pogroupadvisors.com for more resources and tune in next time for more exciting conversations like this one.